Deep in the shadows of Rome, a man carved a simple shape into the dirt road, waiting to see if a stranger would finish the design. This was the early network of faith, a hidden world where a wrong word meant certain death. Believers met in dark basements, always listening for the heavy boots of guards. They were hunted, yet they held on to a truth they valued more than their own breath. This early system required absolute secrecy and unbreakable trust. To survive, these small groups created a quiet web of signs and hidden paths through dangerous cities. Every letter was carried by hand, hidden under cloaks across miles of hostile land. If a soldier found one, the sender and receiver would be dragged away in chains, leaving nothing behind but an empty home. The rules for staying alive were strict and terrifying. When a meeting was called, people walked alone, taking different streets to confuse anyone watching. They knocked on heavy doors using special rhythms, waiting in the freezing air for the slide of a lock. Inside there were no bright fires, only a single candle and a hurried sharing of bread before sunrise. Even in death, their actions were planned to avoid the watchful eyes of the state. They dug deep tunnels into the soft rock beneath the city, creating dark mazes where the law could not easily follow. Here, in the blackness, they buried their friends and carved small words of hope into the stone. Every step was a calculated move in a deadly game, but the shadows could not hide everyone forever. When the state finally found a secret room, the violence was meant to wipe the local church off the map. Soldiers dragged men and women into bright public squares, forcing them before stone statues. The demand was simple and crushing: throw incense into the fire to honor Roman gods, or lose your life right there. For those who refused to bow, the punishment was a public warning meant to shock the city into obedience. The church saw its teachers and mothers thrown into dark prisons without a fair trial. They were stripped of their homes and rights, treated as enemies of the human race. The empire believed that by cutting off the head of this faith, the body would rot in fear. The terror of those nights left deep scars on the hearts of those left behind. Imagine sitting in the dark, holding a crying child, knowing your husband was just taken away to the arena, never to return. The crushing weight of grief filled the quiet rooms, leaving empty chairs and broken families. Every knock at the door sent cold panic through their chests. Yet in the middle of this deep sadness, a strange feeling took hold of the broken community. When they heard stories of their friends facing wild animals with calm faces, the fear slowly turned. The tears they cried for lost brothers mixed with a quiet, burning pride. They realized the worst thing the empire could do had already been done, and their spirits were not broken. This is where the grim math of the empire completely failed. Every time a believer was struck down, Roman leaders expected the movement to shrink. But the exact opposite happened. The extreme cruelty of the state did not act like water putting out a fire. It acted like wind on a spark. People watching this quiet bravery began to ask questions, sparking an unexpected growth. The very arenas built to kill the faith became its loudest stage. As the blood dried in the sand, new faces showed up at secret doors in the night, asking to learn about the hope that defeated fear. The empty spaces left by those taken were quickly filled by 10, then 100 more. The empire tried to bury them, never realizing they were planting seeds. Down under the busy streets of Rome, dark tunnels held a secret light. These hidden caves became safe rooms for the growing faith. Small oil lamps pushed back the shadows, lighting up the faces of slaves sitting next to rich masters. The air smelled of wet earth and quiet prayers. The message of love spread fast. Moving from house to house in the dead of night, out in the open dusty roads carried this new hope to faraway towns. Marketplaces heard whispers of an inclusive promise, stating everyone mattered. Men and women stood by city wells, sharing stories of a kingdom not of this world. The movement did not need grand temples. It grew in quiet corners of regular homes, wrapping its roots deep into the daily lives of the forgotten above ground. A very different kind of power ruled. The Roman system was built on total control, demanding everyone bow to the emperor. To keep order, leaders needed absolute obedience. If people refused to worship Roman statues, they were seen as dangerous enemies. The empire ran on strict rules, sharp swords, and the fear of crushing punishment. This massive machine of power could not understand people who only bowed to a higher king. Under leaders like Nero, the state turned its heavy gaze toward these believers. The government used its huge army to force everyone to think the same way. They had a clear plan to crush any new idea. The Roman way was to show total force. The steps to hunt down believers were cold and careful. Soldiers marched into neighborhoods at dawn, kicking down doors to drag families from bed. They kept long lists of names on thick scrolls, checking off each person thrown into dark cells. Judges sat on high wooden chairs in town squares. They demanded prisoners deny their faith right in front of the crowds. Later, under the harsh rule of Diocletian, the orders became even more cruel. Guards searched houses to burn holy books in giant fires. They took away property, locked up church leaders, and closed hidden meeting spots. The state tried to cut off the head of the movement by taking out anyone who taught others. It was a strict plan to wipe the faith away entirely, but this brutal persecution brought a completely unexpected result. Instead of running in fear, the Christian believers held on to each other tighter. When the state took their homes, they shared whatever scraps of bread they had left. The harsh punishments forced them to trust completely in the unseen. The fires meant to burn them away only made their deep inner strength shine brighter. The ultimate impact of these attacks was a rock-solid resilience that shocked the guards. When a mother was taken, other families stepped up to raise her children. The community built a hidden safety net of charity that no sword could cut. Because they had nothing left to lose, they became fearless. The pressure meant to crush them, squeeze them into unbreakable diamonds of faith. The pain they felt was real, and the tears they cried were heavy. Every story of martyrdom brought a sharp ache to the hearts of those left behind. Children missed fathers, and wives wept for husbands lost to the cruel arena. Yet even as their hearts broke, a strange, quiet peace settled over their souls. They felt a warm, comforting presence in their sadness. This heavy grief mixed with a soaring hope that looked past the suffering. As they washed the wounds of the hurt and buried their brave loved ones, they sang soft songs of a better tomorrow. The dark shadows of their trials could not steal the bright light in their eyes. They knew their pain had a purpose. In the center of their worst nightmares, they found overwhelming joy. The Roman leaders fully expected the group to die out. They thought fear would finally break the Christian spirit and empty their secret meetings. But the believers did something that shocked the empire. Instead of running away to hide, they stood tall and walked right back into the open streets. Their numbers did not shrink. In fact, they grew faster than ever before. The Christian message of love and kindness became a loud voice in a cruel world. When a bad sickness hit a city, the rich ran away. But the believers stayed behind to care for the sick, sharing their food with the poor. Picture the damp dirt floors of the secret underground tunnels beneath Rome. Down in the dark, next to the resting places of their fallen friends, the believers gathered by the glow of small oil lamps. The air smelled of stale earth, yet inside these hidden stone rooms, the feeling was not cold or scary. It was a place of deep, buzzing warmth. Slaves sat right next to rich sellers, sharing the exact same cup and the exact same bread. The harsh rules of the world above did not matter down here in the dirt. The tight spaces echoed with quiet prayers and the soft sounds of a new family. This deep bond created an unseen shield around the believers. Their tough spirit was not just a brave feeling in their hearts. It was a clear, daily plan of taking care of one another. If a father was locked up in a Roman jail, the rest of the group made sure his children had food. They put all their small coins into one shared box. This money was used to buy freedom for slaves or to pay for a safe grave for those who died. The Roman guards could not understand how to break a group that did not care about money. The church simply grew thicker around every wound. To keep this strong web of friends alive across many miles, they used a careful plan of secret letters. Brave runners traveled on dusty roads, hiding small rolls of paper under their coats. These letters carried words of hope from church leaders in prison. When a group read the words, they copied the letter by hand for the next town. The final result of all this quiet strength changed the world forever. After nearly 300 years of trying to wipe them out, the mighty Roman Empire finally gave up. In the year 313, a new law was written that made it safe to be a Christian. The empire had to bow to their unbroken faith. The believers no longer had to hide in the dirt tunnels. They walked out into the bright sun and built large, beautiful places to pray in the center of the cities. The harsh Roman rules that once hunted them were replaced by leaders who asked them for advice. The cross became a famous sign of hope, but the deep marks of those hard years never truly faded away from the families who lived through them. Old men and women would sit with their grandchildren, pointing to the faded scars on their wrists from heavy iron chains. They spoke in quiet, serious voices about the brave friends who never came home. The heavy cost of their freedom left a lasting ache. The families who lost loved ones to the wild animals or the terrible fires had to find a way to keep going. They did not build giant stone statues to remember their dead. Instead, they kept small, simple items. A piece of rough cloth or a wooden cup used by a mother who was taken away became a treasured prize. These quiet items were handed down to their children. The young ones learned early that their beliefs cost a great deal. The empty chairs at their dinner tables were a constant, silent proof of the heavy price paid for their new freedom to pray in the open. Today, deep under the busy streets of Rome, the old dirt tunnels still exist. If you walk through those cold, quiet halls, you can still see the rough marks scratched into the soft rock. There is a simple drawing of a fish, carved by a shaking hand in the dark, hundreds of years ago. That one small mark tells the whole story. The greatest army in the ancient world tried to crush a tiny group of believers, but the mighty empire fell, and that simple drawing remains. It stands as a quiet, solid truth that hope will always outlast the night.